So if your SwiftUI views are doing literally everything, loading data, handling logic, building layout, then this video is for you. Today we're going to be building a SwiftUI app using the MVVM architecture from scratch. Let's take a look at an example of MVVM. So MVVM stands for Model, View, and ViewModel, and it's one of the most effective ways to write clean, testable, and scalable code in SwiftUI. So let's take a look at the MVVM model that we have created here, and we'll be creating this together too. So let's first look at the model where we have a task. It's going to hold the core data structure, no logic, no UI. Then we have the view model here. It's going to have its own state, handle its own logic, and update the model. And we're going to be using the published property to tell SwiftUI to update when data changes. And then we have the view within our content view here. The view only cares about what to display, not how the data works. If I want to reuse this view logic in another screen or write tests or pull data from the cloud, no problem. So let's go ahead and create an example on Xcode so you can get a little bit of practice. So let's go ahead and create a new project on Xcode, make sure on iOS app. I'm going to call mine MVVM example1, interface SwiftUI language Swift, no testing or storage needed today. Let's go ahead and create a new empty file here, and we can call it, task, or we can just refer to it as the model for our purposes today. And let's go ahead and recreate that task app that I had. So we'll create a structure here, and we'll call it task. And we're also going to make it identifiable. If you remember from our data modeling video, when we make things identifiable, we do need to make sure it conforms to the protocol where we have an ID. So let's go ahead and let the ID equal a UUID with empty parameters. Then we can add different variables. So in this case, we'll add a title that's the string, and we'll add a variable to track if the task is done, which we can track with a Boolean value. If you want to add more things here, feel free to do so. Make sure we're importing SwiftUI, and if you want to as well, you can also import Foundation. So this is going to handle our core data structure. Even when I'm creating things in games like players or player profiles, I would be handling it in its own Swift file. Now let's go ahead and create another empty file, and let's call this one the view model. Let's do our imports again, so SwiftUI and Foundation, and any other ones you may need to be including. And this is where we're going to be creating our class. So we'll call this one task view model. And we're going to conform this to be an observable object. And we're going to be doing this, and we can see with our quick help, or if you want to open the documentation as well, because we're going to be using that published property to have it update automatically whenever data does change. So let's go ahead and add our brace here, and we'll add our @published var. And this is going to be for our tasks. We're going to add our colon, and then within our square brackets, we're going to reference the task from our model. All of these pieces are going to be working together in tandem. We're going to have this then equal another square bracket. I'm going to hit return so I have a little bit more line. And this is where we're going to be adding all of our tasks. So we can use the autofill feature here to grab data and structure from that model. So let's go ahead and say for this task, I need to clean the house. And for this one, well, certainly it is currently false for that value. And make sure you separate any of these task values with a comma afterwards. And let's go ahead and add a couple more. Maybe for this one, it can be, send emails. I am very good at sending my emails for work, so I'm going to set this one to be true. And let's add another one. Maybe we can say, go to the gym. And I haven't done that yet today, so that one's going to be set to false. We can add any other logic here as well. So in this case, I'm going to add a function, and we'll call it toggle task. Also call it maybe toggle done. In the brackets, we're going to add a underscore space and then reference our task, which will conform to the capital T task. Then we're going to add our brace. We'll create a guard let statement, where we have an index, which will equal the tasks dot first index with a capital I here. We're going to use the autofill feature where, and this is where we're going to reference the ID as well as the kind of spot where it is in the array. So I'm going to replace this kind of placeholder with a brace, and I'm going to do the $0 because our arrays start at 0, dot ID. We're going to have this double equal sign, the task dot ID. Outside of the brace and bracket, this is where we can handle our else because we're using a guardlet after all. And we'll do space, return, space. I've had some students in the past where they haven't put these spaces within the returns, and that's a very weird error to kind of debug. Let's go ahead and take the tasks, and in the square brackets we'll have our index, and then we'll say dot is done, dot toggle with empty brackets. So this should allow us to toggle our tasks from being completed or uncompleted. And finally, let's update the view where the users can see what is happening. We can just do this within our content view. If you want to just call it the view, feel free to do so. Now let's go ahead and add a @state object. And we're going to reference this as a private var, which we'll call upon our ViewModel, which will just go ahead and equal ask ViewModel that we've created before. So we are able to reference it and use that data. So I'm going to get rid of my VStack, and I'm instead going to do a navigation view, my brace here. And within the navigation view, I'm going to go ahead and add a list. If you'd like to add a list from the SwiftUI object library instead, feel free to do so, like calling that out. And we're going to add a for each here. And within the brackets, we're going to reference our ViewModel.tasks. Then we'll go ahead and add our brace. We'll start off by saying task singular in, and this is where we can format it and kind of show all those different tasks off. So let's display this with an HStack, and if you want to add some different styling and formatting than me, feel free to do so. And we'll start off by displaying the text of the task, and we're storing that as a string under the title. You can see that we've loaded all 3 of those. Again, none of that data is being found within the view. It's all held within the view model, and it's grabbing that structure from the model. Then we can add a spacer for a little bit of room, because we're going to be adding an image to represent whether or not the task is done, and we can even use the task gesture to handle those completions. So let's go ahead and use the ternary operator here, and we're going to first reference the system name. We're going to then say, okay, so if the task is done, add a question mark for a ternary operator. So if that condition is true, we're going to add the Apple Intelligence has it right, the checkmark circle.fill, and then we're going to use the colon here to basically say else. It's just going to be an empty circle. So right now we can see that send the emails is done, so it's being represented with the checkmark circle fill, and all the other things are represented by the circle. Well, what if in my app I want to click on these things to toggle if they're on or off? Super easy to do. After the image, we're going to add a dot on tap gesture. I'm going to use the autofill with code. I'm going to reference our view model dot toggle tasks, and for this task, it's going to be that task. So now I should be able to click on this, and we can see that we can toggle the kind of completion of any of these tasks. So if I have them all done, if I have none of them done, right? We can click on these images. You notice if you kind of click over here, it doesn't really work in order to, turn them on or off, which is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and add a title just for flair. So still within our navigation view, we'll do a dot navigation title, and we'll call this one tasks. This is great because now if I want to reuse the data, another screen, write tests, pull data from the cloud, it's much, much easier. We have our structure here, how each of these tasks should look, all the information that they should have. We have the processing of it. We also have the toggling if they're on or off, and then we're able to view them on our screen here. And like I said, you can put this on other screens, detail views, etc., etc. This is very malleable. MVVM might sound like an intimidating term, but in reality, it's just a smart way to organize your SwiftUI builds. So your model holds your data, your view model handles business logic, and your view presents the UI. If your SwiftUI files are getting messy, you might want to give MVVM a try. Your future self may thank you. So full code examples are linked below on my GitHub pages. Like, comment, and subscribe. Dream big, code bigger, and we'll see you in the next one.